Hello everyone. We are living in unprecedented and historic times. The weight of just how much life has changed in the last 2 or 3 years is just now beginning to settle in on us. We used to move around quite unconcernedly about the future several years ago, but today, in a world struggling to get back to some sort of normality after a pandemic tore through the human fabric, that relative freedom is just like an ancient memory. I was born in Australia, but I now live in Brazil, more specifically in the city of Sao Paulo, and it's hard for me to grasp that more than 100,000 people died just in Sao Paulo city alone due to COVID. And that's more soldiers from Australia who died in all of the wars of the 20th century. Really amazing. The Collins Dictionary word of the year for 2022 is the word perma-crisis, permanent and crisis. The managing director of Collins said that this word sums up quite succinctly how truly awful 2022 has been for so many people. And so as a mixture of these two words, it defines this present era. Climate calamities, the pandemic itself, political polarizations in many countries, senseless wars, religious, racial, gender conflicts have made this word indispensable. Perma-crisis seems to point to not only a lack of faith in the progress of humanity, but also to a new type of realism into relation to what people can cope with and achieve. Because our crises have become so complex and so deep-rooted that they actually go beyond our capacity to understand them. So we have to learn to see things from a deeper, more spiritual perspective. Today we may have one reality. In the space of a week or even a day, anything and everything can change. We are living in the world of suddenly. Suddenly. Anything can happen anywhere, to anyone, anytime, for any reason. So change is quite difficult for most of us. But there are ways to spiritually prepare so that our experience isn't so awful. The English word crisis comes from the Greek krisis, which means decision or turning point. So instead of getting caught up in the confusing details that most crises generate, what sort of accurate understanding do I need to decide better what to do to make the situation really into a positive turning point for myself? And for this, I need to clean the lenses through which I see. The two sets of cameras on most mobile phones, the front-facing camera is very basic, it's used for selfies, video calls, but the back camera is very sophisticated mostly. And on most of these smartphones, there's a whole array of things that attempt to capture as much of the outer world as possible through those lenses. But this is how we live our lives mostly. We also have this double possibility, a physical vision for observing the external world and a spiritual vision for examining our inner world, the soul. And we often use this gift, it's actually a gift, in the same way that we use our cameras. We prefer the back camera for the physical, external vision of things, all of the details we get caught up in capturing, processing, reacting to all of these external events and circumstances. We spend more time doing that than looking inward and reflecting and examining the depths of our souls and our hearts. These two ways of seeing the world lead to two distinct narratives. One narrative is related to the self, one to the world. One is unlimited, the other is limited based on the roles and relationships that I have in this physical world as I act out the story of my life. I was born in such and such a place, I grew up, my parents were like this or like that, I studied a particular topic. I became a professional in such and such an area. There were many ups and downs. And in this consciousness, I can't escape thinking that I am this physical identity. And the other narrative, the unlimited one, has to do with my eternal story. Where was I before this birth? Where will I be after it? Where did I come from originally? Where will I go back to? And this obviously connects me to the source of spiritual power and unlimited love, the one we call God or Allah or Jehovah or Shiva, the Great Spirit, whatever the name that people use. And so we're so used to describing, remembering ourselves as physical names and forms, that I'm so-and-so from such and such a place, from such and such a family, with this particular body, culture, religious tradition, and so on. It's like there are two selves. One, the little self, the ego, which is totally associated with this I am so-and-so, and the other is the deeper self, which in its original state is pure, conscious energy. And because of a lack of self-realization and power, the deeper self is pushed and pulled by this ego because of ignorance, because of a lack of spiritual power. Even Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras said that egoism comes from thinking that the seer, which is the true or deeper self, and the instrument of vision, which is the ego, the little self, they are the same thing. It's where our problems come from. In this way, we effectively turn the servant, which is the intellect, the mind, the ego, into the master. And we attribute to it a reality which actually belongs to the self or the soul. And to think I am a spiritual being passing through this human experience, though it sounds simple, requires quite a bit of effort. We are simply not used to looking at the world in these terms. What it means is that I, the soul, am the master. I determine what happens through my mind, intellect, and personality, through my body, and not the other way around. It requires me to redefine my true relationship with others and with matter as well, and of course with God. So these new thoughts are, I am a soul, a point of conscious entity. I'm giving life to this body and to the activities I do through it. We are all souls, irrespective of our physical or cultural relationships, and we interact with other souls. That's it. The bodies are perishable. The souls exist before, during, and after the existence of the body. So this consciousness is very important for meditation practice, simply because it's the soul that meditates and not the body. Since we all have a practice of remembering something or the other, this is exactly what we use in meditation, the ability to remember. So the first step is to remember who I am, to remember the spiritual identity of the soul. Then I start to remember my connection with God. By looking inwards, I can get to a state of calm that helps me to understand even the most crazy situations that are happening around me. I still see the external world, of course, but because of my inner balance, I'm able to adjust to anything that happens. And because I'm internally light, I can just almost immediately turn his scene. Living in such a way I don't become depleted or exhausted by details and complications. I remain content and I can help others to become content also. I give value to my physical condition and body, but I also understand my body. I can operate through it from a more subtle dimension. And I feel freedom from a purely physical perceptions so that I can let go of the past, let go of falsehood, let go of any burden. And as I understand how limiting they really are, I can leave them. It's easy to make a choice between self-respect and arrogance, for example, between inner stability and external insecurity. And by being occupied with my inner kingdom, my inner workings, I become unworried about the ego games and the subsequent involvement in the world around me. And most importantly, I try to serve others through my sense organs rather than seeking pleasure through them. So I'm content to be God's child and student rather than seeking fulfillment through others, as if my value depended on other people's opinions about me. I seek real spiritual strength rather than the frustrated strength that comes from anger and so on. By going inside and looking deeply at my real self, I can become all of this. In fact, I've always thought it a bit funny to call a photo that we take of our own face and body as a selfie, because the real self is invisible. I'm a thinking being within this vehicle, which is my physical body. So this is the consciousness I need to have. And in this consciousness, I can start to understand not only myself, but I can understand the world around me a little bit better. And after all, that is what we need at this moment.